The emergency bay doors hissed open, and the stench of singed cloth and blood followed Quentin Darsey into the sterile, flickering light of the medical chamber. He staggered, one arm clutched tightly to his abdomen, the other bracing against the wall. His jumpsuit was torn across the side, revealing a raw, oozing wound that stretched from his ribcage down to his hip. Behind him, the scorched hallway of the mining vessel still echoed with the last tremors of the pressure breach. "Hold him steady," barked a voice, clinical and sharp. Quentin blinked through the haze. The voice belonged to Dr. Yalrex, the station's resident xenophysician. Towering and lean, the alien's skin shimmered faintly violet under the overhead lights. Her eyes scanned Quentin with mechanical precision as two spindly arms reached for sterilization tools. Quentin dropped to his knees. "Just give me something for the pain first." Yalrex ignored the request, clicking a console with two elongated fingers. Infection markers spiking. Foreign debris embedded in soft tissue. Breach of dermal and subdermal layers. Tertiary inflammation detected. "Yeah," Quentin coughed, spitting blood onto the floor, "because a pipe exploded in my face." Yalrex's secondary limbs hovered inches from Quentin's body, wielding slender instruments that glowed with antiseptic light. The alien paused, observing the wound again. Its pupils narrowed. "This is not a standard organic response. Cellular degradation is accelerating. Your immune system is responding erratically. This infection may be novel." "Novel?" Quentin coughed again. "It's a ruptured gut, not a cursed relic. Just clean it, patch it, and give me some damn antibiotics." Yalrex took a step back, its posture rigid. "No, this must be isolated. If this infection spreads aboard the station, cross-species contamination could result in catastrophic immunological failure. You must be quarantined." Quentin slammed a fist on the cold floor. "I need to stop bleeding out. Quarantine me later." But Yalrex didn't move. A transparent partition began to lower between them, the hiss of pressurized air sealing Quentin inside. The room chilled instantly. "Containment protocol initiated," Yalrex announced. "You will remain here until we determine the infection's properties. If necessary, we will initiate surgical deconstruction." Quentin's bloodshot eyes widened. "Surgical what?" "Deconstruction. Removal and examination of all infected tissue." "You're talking about carving me up while I'm still conscious?" "If necessary." Quentin's breath came in short, ragged bursts. He leaned back against the wall, sweat pouring down his face. "You've got medical supplies. I know you do. Just give me antibiotics. Broad spectrum. That's it." Yalrex didn't respond. Instead, it turned toward a communication panel, speaking in its native dialect to another unseen entity. The minutes dragged. Quentin's wound throbbed with a deep, pulsing heat. He could feel his heart pounding against torn muscle. The burns on his left side began to blister. He clenched his jaw, trying not to scream. He shouted instead. "Yalrex, listen to me. Humans get infected. We treat it. We don't build shrines to it and panic. You are not qualified to assess the biohazard threat. I'm a field engineer. I've had cuts worse than this on Mars. I got tetanus once from a rusted rail. 2 pills a day for a week. I was fine." Yalrex hesitated. Quentin noticed. He pressed on. "I'm telling you, this isn't exotic. It's human biology doing its job. Fighting back. You're overreacting. You are assuming the pathogen is terrestrial," Yalrex said, its voice lower now. "You were exposed to unknown elements during the rupture. We must proceed with caution." Quentin glanced down at his wound. The bleeding had slowed, but the skin around it had turned a dark, ugly red. He gritted his teeth. "Then test the tissue. Run your scans. But give me antibiotics while you do it. If you wait too long, there won't be anything left to scan." Yalrex stood still for a moment too long. Then, without a word, it turned and exited the chamber. Quentin exhaled and slumped to the floor. The room was cold and humming, the lights too bright. He curled slightly, protective of his side. His mind began to drift, flashes of the explosion dancing behind his eyelids. When he woke, the world felt heavier. His limbs were sluggish. The air tasted like metal. Yalrex reappeared with a tray of instruments and a sealed injector. Preliminary tests indicate a standard polymicrobial infiltration. No alien pathogens detected. Quentin blinked. "So it's just a regular infection?" "Yes. But highly aggressive. Your immune system is under strain. Still within human norms." "Then give me the antibiotics." Yalrex hesitated. We are not familiar with the pharmacokinetics of human drugs. I am. Quentin reached weakly toward the tray. Grabbed the amoxicillin. The one labeled in red. I've used it before. Yalrex lifted the injector. Administration may lead to side effects. Not administering it will lead to sepsis. You choose. Yalrex injected the dosage carefully. Quentin winced. The burn in his side pulsed again, but this time with a duller edge. He lay back and closed his eyes. The next hours passed in a blur. Machines beeped gently. Fluids were administered. Quentin drifted in and out of consciousness. Yalrex only spoke when necessary, recording vitals, adjusting dosages. By the second day, the redness around the wound had receded slightly. Quentin's fever broke slowly, sweat pooling under his back. When his eyes opened, Yalrex was standing over him, scanning the site. The infection is stabilizing, it said. Your body is responding to treatment. Quentin gave a weak nod. Told you. Antibiotics. Yalrex didn't answer. Instead, it hovered near the console, typing notes with rapid precision. You were prepared to dissect me, Quentin said, voice raspy. Just because you didn't understand what was happening. I was prepared to protect the station, Yalrex replied. That is my duty, and I was trying to stop from dying. That's mine. Yalrex tilted its head. You did not panic. Most species, faced with such trauma and medical uncertainty, devolve into hysteria. Mars doesn't reward hysteria. You either fix the problem or join the rock. Yalrex paused. You are recovering quickly. Within 72 hours, your vitals should return to baseline. We will keep you under observation. Fine. But next time, Quentin said, shifting slowly to sit upright. Maybe start with the antibiotics and work your way up to surgical deconstruction. Yalrex observed him for a moment, then turned back to the console. That night, Quentin dreamed of rusted pipes and Martian dust. When he woke again, he asked for water, then painkillers, then his datapad. The wound burned less. His body ached in familiar ways now, ways that meant healing. 3 days later, he walked out of the medical bay with a limp and a sealed packet of oral antibiotics. His side was covered in a reinforced mesh dressing, and his ribs still throbbed with movement, but he was upright. Yalrex met him at the exit. You will report for follow-up in 48 hours. Quentin nodded. And you'll update your protocols? Yalrex considered this. I will recommend a revised approach to human infections. Quentin grinned, winced, and walked off toward the lift. Behind him, Yalrex watched in silence, for eyes blinking in sync. The infection had not spread. The human had asked for antibiotics, and somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. The first thing Quentin noticed about the med bay after his quarantine ended was that someone had moved the plants. Before, there had been a row of bioluminescent flora along the inner window ledge, something Yalrex had cultivated for atmospheric regulation. Now they were gone. In their place sat a sealed containment cube, pulsing faintly amber. He didn't ask. He just limped to the nearest stool and eased himself down with a grunt. Yalrex stood by the central console, its upper arms folded in a posture Quentin had come to associate with mild suspicion. The lower pair manipulated a series of floating panels, each displaying organ readings and blood work from over a dozen species. Quentin's chart hovered in the far corner, isolated and blinking in a color he hadn't seen before. Teal, maybe? Or something adjacent to worry. You're late, Yalrex said without turning. I stopped by mechanics. Had to make sure no one turned my bunk into a parts locker. You are not cleared for work. I'm not working, Quentin said, pulling up his sleeve. Just sitting nearby while other people work. Breathing inspirationally. Yalrex finally turned. Your humor is a poor substitute for compliance. Quentin held up both hands. Relax. I'm here, aren't I? Yalrex pointed to the padded recliner. Assume position. We are rechecking tissue integration. No candlelit dinner first. Your jokes are decelerating my productivity. Fine. Poke away. Yalrex retrieved a scanning wand and hovered it over the wound site. Quentin flinched as it buzzed softly, the tip emitting a faint vibration. No fever. No discharge. Inflammation minimal, Yalrex said. The synthetic dermal layer has begun merging with epithelial tissue. Cool. That mean I can ditch the dressing? No. Your movement patterns indicate you are placing stress on the lateral fascia. Removing the barrier now could result in tearing. Quentin exhaled slowly. So I'm still grounded. You are still healing. which, considering the extent of your injuries, is statistically improbable at this rate. I hydrate. I sleep. I take the pills. And I'm not allergic to anything except bad coffee and motivational speeches. Human pharmacodynamics remain disconcertingly aggressive. That's a compliment where I come from. Yalrex stored the wand and pulled up a new panel. We sequenced your blood work again this morning. Yeah? Find anything weird? No. But the rate at which your white cell count normalized defies comparative baselines. Your immune system appears to have overcorrected. Overcorrected. It is now generating minor antibodies against compounds it was previously tolerant of, including polyethylene glycol and trace elements of the antiseptic used during your treatment. Quentin frowned. So I'm becoming allergic to soap? Not allergic. Reactive. Your system flagged it as a contaminant. Well, that's annoying. It is unpredictable, which is becoming a theme. Quentin shifted in the chair and scratched his chin. Let me guess. You want more samples. Urine, blood, and saliva. Preferably within the hour. Romantic. Yalrex handed him a collection kit. Do not contaminate the containers. Your kind's tendency to multitask while providing samples has already corrupted 2 data sets. I wasn't multitasking. I was just trying to fix a coolant valve while Yalrex raised a hand. No further elaboration required. Quentin chuckled and took the kit to the side room. When he returned, Yalrex had pulled up a comparative chart showing immune responses from 12 species. The human line spiked erratically across the graph. See that? Quentin said, pointing at the red jagged peaks. That's what we call stubbornness. Yalrex didn't look impressed. Your physiology adapts with alarming disregard for consistency. If it were not so effective, I would call it chaotic. We call it freelancing. Yalrex tapped the display. This is not sustainable. Your antibodies are overproducing at a rate that may begin targeting benign tissues. Autoimmunity is a credible risk. Yeah, but it hasn't happened yet. Yet is not a comfort. Neither is paranoia. Yalrex turned away abruptly and moved to the containment cube. Inside, a small vial floated in suspension, filled with a dull green fluid. What's that? Sample from the ruptured pipe you were exposed to. It contained trace biofilm. Likely dormant, but structurally unusual. You think that's what set things off? Unclear. The compound is biologically inert in most species, but your system responded as if it were parasitic. Maybe it just didn't like the taste. Yalrex narrowed its upper eyes. You persist in trivializing what may be a serious cross-species interaction. I'm not trivializing anything. I'm just not panicking. Yalrex was silent for a moment. Then, your calmness is not logical. You're used to systems that follow rules. Yes. Well, humans don't. We follow outcomes. Yalrex stared at him. That is an irresponsible philosophy. It's also why I'm not dead. Yalrex turned back to the console. We are rerunning the sample through a stress test. If the biofilm reacts to simulated immune agents, we may isolate the trigger. Great. And what do I do until then? You continue resting. And avoid further injury. Wasn't planning on recreational impalement. Yalrex gestured toward the exit. Return in 40 hours. We will have updated results. Quentin stood, stretching carefully. Want me to bring you anything? A human immune system in a jar? Some sarcasm concentrate? No, suit yourself. He walked out, boots echoing on the polished floor. When he returned 2 days later, the containment cube was gone. In its place, a cryogenic storage unit hummed quietly. Yalrex didn't greet him. It was hunched over the data feed, every limb occupied. Quentin cleared his throat. I'm early. You can yell at me later. Yalrex activated a display. The biofilm sample replicated when exposed to your antibody profile. Replicated. It grew. So it liked me. No. It responded defensively. It mimicked part of your immune protein to mask itself. Quentin blinked. Wait. It learned. Adapted. Temporarily. Then auto-leased. Auto what? It destroyed itself after the mimicry failed. Your immune response was too aggressive. Quentin sat down. So I scared it to death. It is more accurate to say your immune system overwhelmed it before it could fully integrate. He ran a hand through his hair. You think that's going to be a problem? Yalrex hesitated. It depends on whether the compound exists elsewhere on the station. Quentin leaned forward. You're telling me there's a chance that gunk is still floating around in the pipes somewhere? Unlikely, but not impossible. Then we need to check the other systems. Engineering, waste lines, coolant. I have already dispatched drones. Good. Because if that stuff hits someone with a weaker immune system, they may not survive. Quentin exhaled. Yes, I was lucky. You were incompatible, Yalrex corrected. And incompatible systems are unpredictable. Which is lucky. Yalrex didn't argue. Instead, it pulled up a new chart, one with a faint blinking square marked human, immune profile 3rd variant. You've mutated? Quentin asked. No. You have. Or rather, your immune memory has altered since your last injury 2 years ago. Your response now suggests a tertiary adaptive layer. I don't even remember being sick 2 years ago. It was not an illness. Your record shows exposure to a Martian rust mite. That little thing? It itched for a day. It left an imprint. One which appears to have activated during this recent infection. So what? I've got a little archive of microscopic battle plans running in me now. Yalrex closed the display. If so, it is not something we can replicate. Well, Quentin said, standing again, maybe next time your containment protocol should start with a few questions instead of a scalpel. Yalrex didn't respond. As Quentin walked toward the exit, he paused. You know, he said, glancing back, we're not as chaotic as we look. We just adapt fast. Too fast sometimes. But it's how we get through things. Yalrex watched him go, then looked again at the chart, the jagged peaks, the shifting baselines, the impossible recovery. Then it carefully saved the file under a new classification, unknown, Human Immunologic Strategy Active Study. The decontamination chamber steamed with a faint hiss as Quentin stepped into the diagnostic suite, bare from the waist up. Thin gauze still covered part of his flank, but the bruising had faded to a blotchy yellow. He scratched at the edge of the adhesive, resisting the urge to peel it early. Yalrex didn't look up from the console. You're overdue, it said, adjusting the magnification on a rotating holoscan. This was scheduled for the 2nd solar cycle. It is now the 4th. Got caught up replacing a faulty reactor seal, Quentin said, dropping onto the examination platform. You'd be relieved to know it didn't explode. You were not cleared for strenuous activity. I used my left side. That is not how musculature works. Quentin shrugged. Didn't pull anything. Didn't bleed. I even wore the vest this time. Yalrex moved to his side, holding a flexible sensor array that unfolded with a snap. It pressed the device against Quentin's ribs, scanning layer by layer with a dull blue glow. You're still favoring the right side when you breathe, Yalrex observed. You're compensating for residual stiffness. Yeah, I noticed. Lifting anything heavier than a wrench makes it feel like someone's pinching my lung. You should have reported that. I figured it was normal. Pain is not a diagnostic tool. It is a warning. Pain is also how I know I'm not dead. Yalrex didn't respond. It rotated the scanner across his back, pausing at a spot near the lower ribs. There is still mild inflammation in the intercostal tissue. Adhesions may have formed. I'll apply heat therapy. Quentin glanced over his shoulder. You've got a heat lamp? Infrared plasma gel. It induces localized vasodilation. Sounds fancy. Will it sting? No, but you will sweat. Great. I didn't bring a towel. Yalrex retrieved a translucent applicator and smeared a thin layer of shimmering gel along Quentin's side. It warmed quickly, almost soothing, until it reached the edge of scar tissue and flared hot. That's not no sting, Quentin muttered, gritting his teeth. You are reacting to nerve reactivation. It is expected. I was hoping to avoid expected things today. Yalrex set the applicator aside and began adjusting the room's lighting spectrum. The walls dimmed, and the ceiling emitted a soft amber hue. You will remain still for 12 minutes. No movement. The gel must fully absorb. Quentin lay back, arms folded behind his head. So, this is the part where we sit in awkward silence. I am analyzing your liver function. Exciting. It is elevated. Quentin opened one eye. Elevated how? Your hepatic enzymes are slightly above baseline. It may be due to the antibiotics. I will retest in 72 hours. That's not a surprise. I drank half a canister of recycled water laced with rust flakes during the breach. You did not mention this before. I was bleeding out at the time. That context is not helpful. It's honest. Yalrex turned away and began compiling a new set of readings. The gel on Quentin's side had begun to crystallize slightly, forming a thin, iridescent film. Do not touch that, Yalrex warned without looking. I wasn't going to. You were staring at it. I'm not a toddler. You just attempted to peel your gauze with a wrench handle. That was a tactical choice. Yalrex ignored him. It tapped out a series of commands, pulling up full body vitals. For holographic silhouettes rotated slowly, each highlighting minor anomalies. Your spleen is slightly enlarged. Cool. Can I get a ribbon or something? You are experiencing residual immune activation. Your body is still producing secondary antibodies. I thought that was good. It is not inherently dangerous, but it is inefficient. The immune memory is overcompensating. You may develop temporary fatigue or joint stiffness. Already had that this morning. Thought it was from sleeping crooked. It may persist for several cycles. Is there anything I can do about it? Rest, hydration, and stop replacing reactor seals. Quentin raised both hands. Message received. Yalrex tapped a final sequence and stepped back. The thermal treatment is complete. Do not remove the gel until it flakes naturally. It will assist with the remaining adhesion. Quentin sat up slowly, flexing his side. It still ached, but the heat had softened the stiffness. He rotated his torso experimentally. I can twist better. That's progress. You will remain under monitoring for another 6 cycles. I will schedule your final clearance then. Assuming I don't do anything reckless. That is unlikely. Hey, I've been good. You replaced a radiation shield without clearance. That was yesterday, and I wore the vest. Yalrex didn't reply. Quentin stood and began fastening his uniform back over the dressing, careful not to jostle the crystallized gel. The fabric tugged slightly where the adhesive met his skin. Out of curiosity, he said, buttoning the last strap, has anyone else ever had a reaction like mine to that pipe gunk? No. We tested 7 other species. No immune response at all. Then why did I respond like it was trying to kill me? Yalrex folded its upper arms. Your system's hyper-responsiveness remains unexplained. You may possess an unknown mutation. Lucky me. Or unlucky. If it had replicated faster, your body might have initiated full systemic rejection. But it didn't. No. You neutralized it. Aggressively. Quentin picked up his toolkit from the floor. Maybe I'm just built for chaos. Chaos is not a survival strategy. It is when everything else fails. Yalrex tapped a final note into the chart. You are dismissed for today. Return in 3 rotations. Quentin nodded and headed to the exit. Just before the door slid open, he paused. You know, he said without turning, it's weird. Back home, we'd call what I had a bad infection. Maybe toss in a tetanus booster for luck. Here, it's a full-blown containment incident. You are not home, Yalrex replied. No. But I'm still human. He stepped out, the door sealing silently behind him. Inside, Yalrex stared at the empty room for several long moments. Then it walked to the console, isolated Quentin's chart, and tagged it for internal reference. Notable anomaly. Response unreproducible. No further risk. Case closed.